I think things are going to work out. That's about all I can say.
I just loved killing women. When I started killing, I just kept on killing them.
The so-called Night Stalker who has terrorized California.
The same man is suspected in 6 to 8 murders and 25 to 30 attacks.
The most terrifying truth about evil is not that it exists, but that it walks among us wearing a human face.
I'm saying, stop moving and I'll let you go. But I wasn't going to let her go.
He was the best serial killer out there.
The idea was kill, kill, kill.
You killed one of the girls when Matthew was with you, right?
Yes, I did.
If he had observed you kill one of the women, would you have killed him?
In the history of American crime, certain names have become whispered legends. Not for the monsters they appeared to be, but for the normal lives they led while committing unspeakable acts.
Gacy was well respected in his community and even dressed up as a clown to entertain children.
These weren't fictional villains. They were real people who shocked the nation and changed how we view the stranger next door.
Are you a little scared when you look at him?
He just doesn't look like the type to kill somebody.
Serial killer Theodore Bundy has escaped once again. One of the FBI's most wanted men.
Tonight, we uncover the stories of America's 7 deadliest serial killers, whose combined victims numbered in the hundreds and whose legacy of terror still haunts us today. The story of Jeffrey Dahmer begins not with violence, but with abandonment. A lonely child who collected dead animals became a troubled teenager obsessed with dissection. By the time he reached adulthood, these dark fascinations evolved into something far more sinister. Between 1978 and 1991, Dahmer murdered 17 young men and boys, but murder was just the beginning of his depravity. Dahmer's apartment became a laboratory of horrors. He performed crude lobotomies on living victims, attempting to create zombies who would remain alive but completely compliant. He engaged in necrophilia and cannibalism, keeping body parts as trophies and even consuming portions of his victims. What made Dahmer particularly chilling was his ability to appear completely normal to the outside world, holding a job at a chocolate factory, living in a regular apartment building, and even convincing police to return one escaped victim to him, claiming it was just a lover's quarrel. The true extent of his crimes only came to light when Tracy Edwards, his intended 18th victim, escaped and led police back to the apartment. Inside, investigators found 4 severed heads, 7 skulls, 2 human hearts, entire torsos in a vat of acid, and a collection of Polaroids showing Dahmer with various dismembered corpses. In his confession, Dahmer spoke of his crimes with a detachment that chilled even hardened detectives. If Jeffrey Dahmer represented the isolate killer, Ted Bundy showed how a monster could hide behind charm and sophistication. Handsome, articulate, and educated, Bundy shattered every stereotype of what a serial killer should be. His victims, at least 30 confirmed, though estimate ranges much higher, were young women who saw not a killer, but a charming law student who sometimes needed help with a broken arm or loading groceries. Bundy's reign of terror spanned 7 states and multiple years. He would fake injuries, pose as authority figures, or simply rely on his natural charisma to lure victims. Once he had them isolated, the charming facade dropped, revealing a sadistic killer who often kept his victims alive for days of torture before their deaths. He would frequently visit corpses, performing acts of necrophilia until decomposition made it impossible. What made Bundy uniquely terrifying was his intelligence and adaptability. He escaped custody twice, committed multiple murders while on the run, and even acted as his own lawyer during his trial. Even after his capture, he continued manipulating the media and public perception, giving interviews that provided chilling insights into the mind of a sociopath. While Bundy's crimes were shocking in their brutality, Gary Ridgway proved that the deadliest predators could be the most unremarkable. For 2 decades, this unassuming truck painter terrorized the Seattle area, claiming more confirmed victims than any other American serial killer. His toll? 48 confirmed murders with claims of up to 71 victims. Ridgway targeted society's most vulnerable, young runaways and sex workers who might not be immediately missed. He would gain their trust, sometimes using photos of his young son to appear harmless, before strangling them and disposing of their bodies in wooded areas and the Green River. What made his crimes particularly disturbing was his ability to maintain an absolutely normal life, attending church, holding down a steady job, and maintaining relationships while actively hunting and killing. If Ridgway represented the hidden predator, Richard Ramirez was the opposite, a killer who reveled in terror and chaos. During the sweltering summer of 1985, Los Angeles residents lived in fear of a nocturnal predator who struck at random, killing men, women, and children without discrimination. Ramirez, a self-proclaimed Satanist, turned home invasion into a form of terrorism. Unlike other serial killers who had specific victim types or methods, Ramirez was chaos incarnate. He used guns, knives, hammers, and his bare hands. He killed elderly couples in their beds and young children in their homes. He sexually assaulted both women and men, forced children to watch their parents' murders, and made parents watch their children's torture. His crimes weren't just about killing, they were about destroying the very concept of safety. What made Ramirez particularly frightening was his complete unpredictability. He didn't follow patterns, didn't stick to one area, and didn't care who his victims were. He would break into homes and announce his presence, telling victims he was going to kill them and making them pray to Satan. His capture came only after his face was broadcast across media outlets, leading to a citizen's arrest when he was recognized trying to steal a car. While Ramirez represented chaos, John Wayne Gacy showed how evil could hide behind respectability and community service. A successful businessman, political activist, and occasional children's entertainer who performed as Pogo the Clown, Gacy murdered 33 young men and boys between 1972 and 1978, burying most of them in the crawl space beneath his house. Gacy's methods were as calculated as his public persona. He would lure young men with promises of construction work through his contracting business, or sometimes by pretending to be a police officer. Once in his home, victims were handcuffed under the pretense of showing them a magic trick, then tortured and sexually assaulted before being strangled with a rope or garrote. His crawl space became a mass grave holding 26 bodies. When he ran out of room, he began dumping bodies in nearby rivers. What made Gacy's crimes particularly horrifying was the contrast between his public and private lives. He was photographed with First Lady Rosalynn Carter, helped organize community parades, and was seen as a pillar of his community, all while his house became a channel house of horrors. Even after his arrest, he showed no remorse, claiming his victims were worthless little queers and punks and that he was doing society a favor. Like Gacy, Dennis Rader lived a double life, but his particular brand of evil came with a narcissistic need for attention. For 31 years, he terrorized Wichita, Kansas, killing 10 people while serving as a church council president, Boy Scout leader, and compliance officer. His self-given name, BTK, standing for Bind, Torture, Kill, became a source of terror in the community. Rader's victims ranged from entire families to single women, all killed with methodical precision that reflected his military background. He would stalk victims for days or weeks, learning their routines before striking. His attacks were meticulously planned, often involving hit kits with weapons, rope, and tape. What set him apart was his compulsion to communicate with media and police, sending taunting letters describing his crimes in detail. The most chilling aspect of Rader's case was his complete compartmentalization. He would attend church leadership meetings and scout activities, then go home to write detailed accounts of his murders or plan new ones. His own family had no idea they were living with BTK until his arrest in 2005, which came about through his own arrogance when he sent a traceable floppy disk to police. The final chapter in our dark history brings us to Boston, where between 1962 and 1964, 13 women aged between 19 and 85 were sexually assaulted and strangled in their own homes. Albert DeSalvo, later known as the Boston Strangler, represented a new kind of terror, the killer who might be any friendly maintenance man or delivery person at your door. DeSalvo's crimes were particularly bold, committed in broad daylight in densely populated areas. He would gain entry by claiming to be a maintenance worker, then attack his victims, leaving behind a grotesque signature that terrorized the city. The string of murders changed the way women lived in Boston, leading to unprecedented sales of door locks and window bars. What makes the Boston Strangler case uniquely disturbing is the lingering doubt about DeSalvo's guilt. When he confessed to the murders in detail, no physical evidence linked him to most of the crimes. Modern DNA testing has only confirmed his involvement in one case, leaving questions about whether he worked alone or if there were multiple killers using the same method. These 7 predators represent more than just a catalog of crimes, they represent the darkness that can lurk behind any facade. The charming neighbor, the respected businessman, the helpful maintenance man, each of these killers prove that monsters don't always lurk in the shadows. Sometimes they live next door, attend our churches, work in our factories, and walk among us wearing masks of normalcy. Their stories serve not just as historical records of tragedy, but as warnings that evil often wears a familiar face. While their reigns of terror have ended, their impact on American society, law enforcement, and our collective psyche continues to echo through time, reminding us that the scariest monsters aren't found in horror movies, they're found in our own communities.